in entrepreneurship. They're leaving these high tax states that were also high lockdown states. So inevitably, what has happened here when this capital has moved? Well, for the first time ever, we have the 6 fastest growing southern states now accounting for more national GDP than the New York, Washington, D.C., Boston corridor. I had this chart last year. I have it again because the question is, why would it reverse? Are we going to see a net outflow back to high tax states? I doubt it. This is going to continue. This is how we build positive momentum. I had this chart last year too. AUM migration, assets under management. Now for the first time ever, the state of Florida has more AUM than the state of Connecticut. Why would this reverse? Why would they go back en masse? They're not going to. The positive momentum here will keep building. Next, Bloomberg published this article recently. This is not new data. Bloomberg is kind of acting like it is because they used to be very anti the Miami positive story, but now they're kind of coming around to it because they can't pretend it's not happening anymore. So they're publishing here that New York lost $9 billion of income in 5 years to Miami and Palm Beach, and they have a chart showing the departure of millionaires. So to the right, we have a chart that's published data through 2024 by a firm called Henley & Partners, showing that Miami and West Palm Beach are among the world leaders for millionaire growth as a percentage of the existing base. So again, these two charts corroborate each other. What I have circled there in the bottom is the journal saying that it's a little bit scary when millionaires leave because the top 1% of their filers of the city's filers account for over 40% of the tax base. I mentioned that last year. I'm glad they're saying it now. So it's actually quite bad when your taxpayers leave because again, 1% account for over 40% of your tax base. You lose 10% of those people, you've decimated your budget. And they're not going to go back at scale. Why would they? The cat's out of the bag. Life is good here. Life is good in other places. They're not going to go back. So this is how it's going to keep going. And politicians, as I keep saying, are not incentivized to care. All they want to do is stay in power. And they're going to keep pandering to the growing percentage in their jurisdictions, in these feeder jurisdictions, of people who do not pay in. It's how we get the Venezuela model playing out across the country. Oh, some of us know what that is exactly. All right, so and we have an example here. We have Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos, as I'm sure we all know, has spent about $250 million in Indian Creek. When he departed his home state of Washington, they were floating a wealth tax on tradable net worth above $250 million. They targeted 5 people in the state. He was one of them, and his theoretical contribution would have accounted for 45% of this tax revenue. What did he do? He left. Why would he stay and pay this? Did those politicians get fired or lose their jobs? They did not. They're going to keep trying to enact measures like this to cater to their base and stay in power, thus feeding their negative momentum cycles. Another thing happening in our market here. We have a growth in $100 million plus properties. This was an article about Ladronin's sale of his home here in Miami Beach for $120 million. And I commented on this article, saying that these guys, Bezos, Ken Griffin, they're like emperors. They come to a place, they bring their courts, they increase the city's presence on a global stage. And these are outlier sales, obviously, but they create headlines. And it creates a legitimacy of wealth attraction when you see these headlines of $100 million plus sales happening all throughout South Florida now. I feel like there's a headline almost every other week. This is a chart from last year. I have it again because why would it change? It stayed the same. 6 of the 10 priciest neighborhoods before COVID were in California. 7 of the 10 priciest are now in Florida. Why would this reverse? Next, this is a snapshot of this year. This is again isolating for higher prices per square foot. I have 2,000 and up a square, look at this, single family. Past 2,000 a square foot, transaction volume in Q1 of this year is up 1,550% versus Q1 of 2019. That's the creation of a whole new appetite and segment of the market, asset class that did not exist before, and it is 82% all cash. For condos, it's a little bit less, it's 529%, but this does not include new construction data. If we were to include that, it would be right up there with single family homes. So it's new prime product that is attracting this wealth and talent migration. I do not see this reversing. You'll see they're all up year over year, and single family past 2,000 a foot was at all-time high this year. This is despite overall drops in transaction volume. So again, super important to segment and recognize where the money is flowing. Show me the money, where's the cash? Look at this. Single family, 1 to 2,000 square foot, 72% all cash, and it just gets more. We're past 80% all cash, past 2,000 a square foot, which is new prime product. So this is not a bubble. Bubbles are built on debt. We have an extremely high all cash market, and I see these kind of false headlines about Miami being a bubble, being overvalued. Bubbles pop when the underlying asset can no longer sustain the debt. That's when you have it collapses like a house of cards. We have cash, heavy cash that is buoying up this the highest parts of our market, and I don't see this changing either. This actually, all cash percentages are up slightly from last year. Next, just as an example, look, we have single family quarterly sales. The overall market is down from last year, 8% transaction volume. Prices are up, by the way. Median pricing is up across the board. That's because of action at the high end. But the press is reporting loss in demand. People aren't buying. Well, past just $1 million, we're actually we're up a 1% year over year, kind of flat, and up 189% versus pre-COVID. So that's just at $1 million. The higher up you go, the higher the rate of growth is. So again, important to segment. Next, another media myth dispelled. This was the Wall Street Journal article touched upon this. Under $500,000, this is kind of shocking. Active listings are down 84%. We have around 600 active listings in Miami-Dade. There used to be over 4,000. And that 600 does not account for land sales, stuff that's a tear down. There's probably 300 livable homes in the market listed in Miami-Dade under $500,000, and it was over 4,000 before 2019. This is also a floor in the market. We cannot replace at this price point because of cost of construction, all of those things. So this isn't going to reverse either. This is a permanent sort of rising of the floor of pricing. And it, of course, there are affordability questions. That's another topic that arise with this data. Third question, what will the future look like? Where is all this going? All right. So I have some global data here as well as some Miami data. I'm going to sort of harken back to the statements that I made last year because the main forces that are driving wealth and talent to our region have not changed. And I don't think they're going to change for the next 5 to 10 years at least. I think that new prime product is going to continue to outperform the rest of the market, and that's going to be the case here and also globally. We have some data here from Knight and Frank showing that global super prime sales have risen 66% in 5 years. This is again despite rising of interest rates, despite overall drops in transaction volumes. There's just a whole other reality happening at the very high end, and it's separated itself from the rest of the market. And I see this continuing. I put as a juxtaposition an NAR chart showing the rate of existing home sales in our country just to show it's down year over year. There are all these articles talking about the sales of homes dropping off. That's not happening at the high end, and I don't see that changing. We also have a list there for 10 million up annualized sales rates across the world. Miami and Palm Beach are featuring there very prominently, and all of these cities are seeing increases in $10 million plus sales. So what's going to happen in Miami is in South Florida, is going to be a combination of this wealth stratification, this growth of wealth at the very high end that's happening globally, on top of the United States' own shift in economic polarities that's going to happen as these sort of 20th century seats of power continue to dissipate. This is why Miami, I think, South Florida, I should say, because it's Palm Beach through Miami, is going to continue to lead the world when it comes to the appreciation of prime new property. So I see this very much continuing. I'm going to add a little funny aside here. Why do I see this continuing? How will the future look in terms of wealth distributions and so forth? So Warren Buffett had a great quote. It was in the Wall Street Journal. It was first in a Wall Street Journal op-ed in 2015, and then it keeps getting sort of reposted. And he talks about the inevitability of wealth gaps, because part of what we're seeing here is the manifestation of a wealth gap when we see super prime rising and the rest of the market dropping, right? Yes, it's wealth moving to Miami, but on top of that, it's a wealth gap in action that's growing. And why is that? So Buffett had this great quote where he talks about how it's inevitable because we have specialization in our economy. And he says in an agrarian economy long ago, no matter how smart you were not going to be 100 times richer than your neighbor. You were do a little bit better than him, but you're still going to be his neighbor, you're in the same town, you're not going to be 100 times richer. When technology comes, interconnectivity comes, we have increased rates of specialization, access to global information that some people avail themselves to, while others watch TV 4 hours a day, right? It's a whole thing. We have the internet. The internet is this bastion of free information. You could take MIT courses for free. You could do all these things. Or you could sit at your computer, play games, and watch porn, right? That's like 30% of the internet. What are most people doing? Most people are not availing themselves of all these free tools. We know this. In the 20th century, we had a giant middle class for the first time in history, and most people watched 4 hours of TV a day and got obese. They didn't avail themselves of it. Those who did, it widens the gap. And that's going to keep happening. And also with AI, I think that's going to increase even more, because AI is going to enhance or replace. If you're at an advanced position in life and you can avail yourself of these tools to enhance what you're already doing, you're going to separate yourself even further. Others will be replaced. So to add to Buffett's statement, I think this gap is only going to widen as we have some people continue to avail themselves of and have access to more tools for specialization in technology. And I have a chart there showing the growth of various wages by brackets. The top 0.1% grew the fastest. It grew 389% over the last, 2079 to 2020. And that will probably accelerate. That's through 2020. I think that's going to accelerate over the next 20 years. And again, it's going to add this growth to the very high end. And I have a tweet there. This has been all over the place. Dalia gave some interviews. This data point's been everywhere. That 60% of Americans read below a 6th grade reading level, and only 3 million people are driving all technological innovation. So if you're reading below a 6th grade reading level, are you being enhanced by AI? I mean, hopefully your life's getting a little bit better, but not in the way that's going to make you money. You're probably replaceable. So this is all, I think, going to further accelerate this trend of wealth divides, wealth distributions, that's going to keep feeding the prime high end in Miami and elsewhere around the world. And I see this trend very much continuing. All right. And I see this continuing too. We're going to have heads of industry continuing to come to places that they feel are friendly to entrepreneurship and creation. Citadel's Tower, I had this last year too, but Citadel's Tower broke ground. Stephen Ross is still even more active than he was last year. So all this is going to continue playing out as our city transforms and continues to rise on the global stage. So how do we align? Recognize the underlying conditions. If they're not going to disappear or reverse. This is not a bad or a negative, it just is, right? And align yourself and your clients with it. Now I have a funny little chart I like to call Training for Life. So all this information is worthless if your mindset is not right. So in my kind of weird double life, I trained jujitsu like 2 to 3 hours a day with one of the best teams in the world. I came actually here from training. That's why my hair is in a bun, because it was really gross. I just came here from there. I was with like 20 guys in the mat before this. And combat sports teaches you perhaps better than anything how to create the reality you want in your mind first. If you don't see it here, it's not going to happen. You have to believe in the inevitability of your own success. You have to turn things into real-time positives. Cut the noise, it's almost all noise. Almost all the news is noise. And realize that position yourself. What we can do is we can position ourselves in a way that we can succeed. So 10, 20 years is a rounding error when it comes to history, but for our lives, it's everything. And so for those 10, 20 years, you want to be in a place that's rising, which is South Florida. If whoever lives here, we're lucky to be here. And then get your brain right. Decide that all this is positive. Decide that it's a good outcome for you. And believe in the inevitability of your own success. And turn those things into, that sounds like a weird thing to say, but it's really true. You have to turn things into real-time positives. Guys, I have a lot of friends who are high-level fighters, they'll tell you this. You get punched in the face in a cage, it's good. You keep going. If you decide that it's bad, you've lost. So you have to keep moving forward. We're in a period of rapid change, and I think those who can align themselves, they're going to win big time. That's my prediction there. And of course, the best way to predict the future is to create it. That's my other prediction there. Follow me there, guys, for reports and so forth. And it has been a pleasure.